Okay, today we're going to be making pizza, and we are starting by making our own dough today. And the first thing we want to do is work with our yeast. So I've got my yeast in here. I had a packet instead of a package, and you will most likely have a package instead of a packet. So I poured it in here just so I could show you how to measure that out. But before we do that, let's get our water. So our water needs to actually be pretty hot to warm, to make it to where the yeast will be activated. So make sure that your water is warm to hot. I'm just checking a few things. There are a few things in my sink. And I'm checking mine, and it's pretty good. I want a half cup, so I'm going to get that. And I think I have it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on eye level to check it and make sure, because things can look like they're correct, but it tends to be a little bit higher than what we think. So it's a little bit more than what I need. So I'm going to just pour a little of that extra out and check it again. And you can do that as many times as you need to. Okay, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to get my yeast now, and I need a teaspoon of yeast. So I could use my teaspoon, or I could use my half teaspoon like I'm going to do today, just so we can practice our equivalents. And I'm going to do that twice. So I'm going to tip my bowl and then level off like we've learned earlier this week. Again, you could do this with one measurement. I'm doing it with just two, just to practice those equivalents. And I've got my teaspoon of yeast. And what I need to do now is just kind of stir. And what will happen is it will dissolve. But it does take a few minutes to do that. So that's why we need to have that warm, hot water. So that way it does allow it to go ahead and dissolve. So if you're seeing little pieces, then we're not quite there yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir a little bit longer. And I can tip my cup if I need to. Oh, my piece is stuck on the side. Okay, it's looking pretty good. So now we just see kind of a, almost looks like dirty water, right? But no more pieces in it. So I'm just going to set that off to the side. And we're going to get started getting the rest of our ingredients put together. So I'm going to move my bowl in here. And we're going to get a few ingredients. The first thing I need to do is add some sugar. But it's a really small amount of sugar. However, yeast really likes sugar. So that's why we're going to add it. So we're going to add a half teaspoon of sugar, and again, I want to level it off, and I can just toss that directly into my bowl. So yeast has to, it's a fungi, or fungi, however you want to pronounce it, and what it does is it feeds off of that sugar, so it likes to use that sugar as a source of energy. So that's why we add that, not because we really want our pizza to taste sweet, right? Because that would be kind of weird. So we're going to also add a little salt. This is for flavor. And I'm doing that over my sink, so that way I don't get too much in my bowl, right? So I've got my sugar and my salt. Now I need to add a little bit of oil. You can add any kind of oil, but since I'm kind of trying to go a healthier route, I'm going to add some olive oil. And this I need a tablespoon. So make sure that you decipher between a teaspoon and a tablespoon. So here is my tablespoon. It's a lot bigger, right, than a teaspoon. And again, I'm measuring off to the side. If I spill on my counter, it's not a big deal. I can always wipe it up. Just making sure all that oil gets added to my bowl. And I'm going to just give that a little bit of a mix. I could wait to mix if I wanted to, but I'm going to go ahead and just mix it up a little bit. Okay, now we're gonna add the bulk of our ingredients, which is our flour. And so I've got my flour container right here. And we're gonna need a cup of flour. Now, flour is an ingredient that can easily be packed down, and we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to scoop right out of my container here, make sure it's not packed down. So mine is not packed down. And I'm going to scoop and add. Let's move this up here a little so you guys can see. So we're gonna fill it up so it's overflowing, right? Because I need it to be overflowing so I can properly level it off. And then don't forget, when you're leveling off, use the back of the knife, not the other way. Because if I did it this way, it's gonna end up taking a divot out of what I need. And if you start to see a hole develop, just back it up the other way. And there's my 1 cup of flour, and I can just toss that in. Now to this, we're gonna also be adding some whole wheat flour. So I'm gonna grab my whole wheat flour. And we're not adding a whole lot, but whole wheat flour has more fiber, so it's going to be a healthier choice again for us to add a little bit. So again, I'm just kind of unpacking it, right? I'm just kind of stirring it around a little bit. And I'll do the exact same thing where I fill up my cup to where it's overflowing. And then I will level off with my knife. And there's my 4th cup, and I'll add that. And we'll take that out of the way. So, here's the basics of it, right? And now I'm going to, again, stir my yeast just to make sure that nothing has settled too far down. I don't think it should have. Looks okay. And you can do it 1 or 2 ways. You really could just mix it, but a lot of people will do what they call a well, where they kind of put like a spot in the center, and then they pour into that. So just like that. And now all we have to do is simply mix this up real well. So just make sure you stir slowly. You don't want it to all come flying out. And it will get thick pretty quick. See that texture? But I really want to do a good job of getting all that dry absorbed by the liquid. And if I did my measurements correctly, I should have more than enough. So we're doing our lab in 2 parts because we are with 40-something minute class schedule, and it makes it kind of tough to do all this in one day. As a result, we will make our dough, just like what you're kind of seeing. And then we will end up packaging it eventually and putting it away for the day. So this looks pretty good, right? As we see it here. Okay. So if you're looking at that right now, you can see it's kind of like on a ball form here, right? But we don't see any like spots of flour down in there, okay? And I can leave my spoon in there. And what I need to do now is get a clean towel. So I don't want to get a dirty one. Make sure you use a clean one. So I brought my clean towel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it, okay, just like this. And the reason I'm covering it is because I want to let it set and rise. So dough, what it does is it rises when we add yeast to it. That's what the yeast does, is it causes it to rise. And if I was making bread, I would let this rise for an hour. And in that time, it would double in size. Since I'm making pizza crust, and we don't want pizza crust to be quite as high as bread, I only need to let it set for about 5 minutes. So I'm going to simply set my timer. So I'm going to just go back here to set my timer. You can hear my little beeping in the background. And I'm going to set it aside for that 5 minutes. After you have let it set aside for 5 minutes, then that's when we will be packaging it. But I'll show you what it kind of looks like afterwards. So real quick, how it looks before. And you may or may not notice much difference after we let it sit for 5 minutes. Our dough has sat for 5 minutes. Okay, so our dough has sat for 5 minutes, and now I'm ready to just take a look at it. And like I said, you may or may not notice any difference. And what we're going to do now, though, is get ready to knead our dough. And so before I do that, I can do a couple things because I want to make sure my surface is clean. I have granite countertops at home, so I can go ahead and knead onto these directly, really any countertop you can. But I want to make sure that my surface is very, very clean. Or if you weren't comfortable with that, you could use some wax paper, but I tend to feel like I chase it all over the place. So it's kind of up to you, but just make sure it's clean. Now, I'm not using my regular sponge for this because sponges tend to hold bacteria. If you were in the classroom, which you guys would be, you guys can use a clean rag that you haven't used for anything else and just really wipe down that area. Now, also what I need to do is dry it. So I need to make sure it's really dry too because I'm going to be doing what they call turning it out. And so since I'm going to be turning out my my dough onto flour, I want to make sure it's really, really dry because otherwise it's going to get really yucky. It's going to be pasty. We don't want that. So what I need to do is just get a little flour. So that's what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of reach over here and grab some flour out of my container. And you're going to actually sprinkle it on your countertop. Kind of like this. So we're doing all of this in day one, okay? So just kind of spreading it. And I have a little bit left in my spoon, which I'll just lay right here because I'm going to use that. And I'm going to do what I call turning it out. So we're going to go ahead and get that onto our flour. Just like that. Okay? And so we're done with this bowl. I'm going to set it in the sink. And the dough's going to be really sticky, okay? It's going to stick to your fingers. So we want to use some flour to help with that. So you can use some of the flour that's on the counter, or you could use some that's left in the spoon. And I usually like to get it on my hands and then just kind of go over the top of it like that. What that's doing is it's putting a little flour on top of it. So that way it is, again, helping it with being sticky. Okay, so it's really nice and floured. So I need to knead my dough. Okay, I know I said it twice, but I need to knead the dough. So there's two ways to do that. I can do where I kind of squish it together like this, and then I pull it up over on top of itself, and then I push with the heel of my hand. So like together, and then push forward, together, and then push forward. It's like this. And as you kind of work with it, it gets faster. I'm obviously resorting to my second way to do it, which is sometimes I like to just take it and kind of do a two-handed method here, where I just kind of turn it onto itself like that. It's really up to you which one. But we don't want to over knead it, so we don't want to go too crazy with it. About a minute is fine. What this will do is get some of those air pockets out. So I'm going back and forth between the two ways to do it. And if your hands start to get sticky, just get a little more flour from the counter or your wax paper, and you can continue on. And if I've done this right, there just won't be much left on my hands. So I've got a little bit of flour here, but you can see it's not overly sticky and sticking to my hands. Okay, at this point, you just basically have a dough ball, right? And what we'll have you do is, since we're doing this in a 2-day unit for the lab, is we will take little containers and we'll spritz them with a little bit of cooking spray. And we will spritz that little container out. We'll put our dough inside, put a lid on it, and then we'll make sure that we label it. And then you'll be ready for day 2, okay? So I'm gonna stop my film and get set up for day 2. Okay, well, welcome back. We are on day 2. And we are ready to go ahead and start to assemble our pizza. So we're going to use a square pan just for time purposes because it'll allow us to be a little bit more flexible with our type of crust that we do, because we can do either a thick crust or a thin crust pizza. Just kind of depends on what you personally like, right? So we also want to be careful though that we don't do it too thick just for time purposes. And so that's what we're going to be mindful of as well. So first thing we need to do is we need to use a little spray, And I'm trying to make it a little healthier, so we're going to use some olive oil to spray our pan. Okay, so we've got some oil down so it doesn't stick to our cookie sheet, which would not be good. And our dough from the previous day looks like this. And we should just be able to take it out and put it onto our pan. And now we're going to roll it, and we have these special rollers in class that we can use right in the pan, which is kind of nice. The pizza dough should be kind of elasticy, so as you roll forward, you'll notice that it kind of stretches back like elastic. And so that's what we're doing right now. You'll see that it kind of pulls as we go along. See how it snaps kind of back? Again, we don't have to roll the entire distance of the pan. That's up to you how thick or how thin you want it. I need to go a little bit more though. Otherwise, I just won't have enough time to get it baked in class, which would not be good. So, like I said, we're kind of rolling it out here. I'm trying to make it somewhat even, right? So it looks like a square. And I also have a second side that we can use. So if I'm having trouble with like one edge, something like that, I can use that. Oops, my dough tore a little bit there, not a big deal. I can always piece it together. Okay, so it's kind of personal choice on what you want to do here with the edge. If you want to fill it all the way up to the edge, you can, or if you want to kind of make like a little border, you can do that too. So it's just kind of up to you. But that's what my crust is looking like. And now we're going to be ready for our toppings. And like I said, we were doing this in lab because we've been learning about nutrition and about healthy eating choices. And pizza is, of course, something that we like to have, most of us. But pizza can be either bad or it can be good. And a lot of it has to do with what you decide to put on your pizza. And so we're going to talk about that as we're working. Again, we also did like some whole wheat crust here. We didn't do all wheat, primarily because I know most students wouldn't like it to be 100% whole wheat, but at home you could alter this. I mean, you could do the whole 1 1/4 cups if you wished. You could do the whole cup and a quarter in whole wheat flour if you wanted to. We added just a little bit. What that will do again is add that fiber and help us stay full a little longer, which is kind of nice. So we're going to go ahead and measure out 1/2 cup of pizza sauce. And again, you could make your own, but I'm going to, for time purposes, save a little bit of time and do some out of a can. And I've got it down on the recipe as 1/2 cup, but you could adjust that. If you don't love a ton of sauce, you could do less. Or if you think this isn't enough sauce, you could add. I didn't add quite all mine, so we're going to see where it ends up at. All I do is use the back of the spoon to help spread that around. And so far, so good. I'm leaving a little bit on the edges, right? So that way I can pick up my pizza. I might need that whole 1/2 cup, so let's add that extra. Again, if you look at this pizza and you go, wow, that's not enough sauce, you can add a little bit more. But make sure you don't end up with like a big glob of it in one section. All right, so there's what the 1/2 cup measurement would look like. And we're ready to top it with some cheese. And I've just got regular mozzarella cheese here. The recipe calls for 1.5 cups of cheese. So I'm just measuring out my cheese here to the side. You may not be able to see it. It might be a little off camera. So there's my cup. Then I need another 1/2 cup. So cheese is good because it provides calcium. But we also want to be cautious with our cheese because it also adds fat and calories. So don't go too crazy. So maybe skip the extra cheese, right? So we're going to add our cheese to our pizza, sprinkling that around. By the way, I've also preheated my oven to 425 degrees. So that way, when I'm done topping it, it's ready to go into the oven. And I just want to make sure I do a good job of getting cheese all over my pizza. Remembering though that it will bake and melt. And that is what my 1.5 cups of cheese looks like on my pizza. Now I'm ready for the topping. So again, this is really what's going to determine the nutritiousness of your pizza or not. You could go with lots of different meats and things like that and make it uber fatty. Or you could try to choose some healthier toppings. And I bet a lot of you already like some of the healthy toppings that we're going to be adding today. One of the things that I found is a good replacement for pepperoni, because I know pepperoni is a popular choice, is something called turkey pepperoni. And I am using just the kind from Aldi's, but as you can see here, hopefully you can see really well, but it doesn't have a lot of fat and calories. It actually only has 70 calories for 16 slices. That's a lot. And it only has 4 grams of fat. So it's a good choice here. So we're going to top our pizza with some of that today. Just kind of spreading it throughout. And for our lab, usually we have lots of different choices too. So if you're not a pepperoni fan, you could choose something else. Another topping I have today that I'm going to be using is some mushroom slices. So I'm going to add some mushroom slices. Mushrooms are really good for you. So I'm adding some of those. You could also add olives, black olives. You could add chicken. You could add tomato slices. Canadian bacon is actually pretty low in fat and calories. And a lot of students like pineapple. Make sure you drain it first. You don't want a soggy, wet pizza. But you could do that. You could do onions. You could do peppers. If you like those things, I would encourage you to add them to your pizza, because that's just going to add more nutrition for you. So basically what we're doing is we're taking a favorite that a lot of students have and trying to make it a healthier version, so that way you can still eat the pizza and foods that you enjoy, but just learn a healthier way to prepare them. Okay, now it's ready to go into my oven, and it's going to go in my oven for, around, I got to check my recipe, double check it, about 10 to 12 minutes. So we're going to start with 10 because we want to always start with that lower time versus going the higher, right? Because we can add time, not take it away. So if I look at 12 minutes and it's burnt, I'm out of luck. If I look at 10 minutes and it doesn't look good enough, then I can go ahead and add some additional time. So now it's ready to go into the oven. Okay, so our pizza has been in the oven. Mine ended up taking closer to that 12-minute time till I got the color that I was looking for. You are looking for a couple things. First, you want it to be browned around the edges, and also you want it to have the cheese all melted. So this is what our completed product would look like. Then all you would need to do is slice it up and enjoy.